Hello from New York. My name is Lee Oden. I'm the CEO of Top Rank Marketing, and I am thrilled to be here for the New York portion of the Global Marketing Conference, organized by the team at Semrush. Now, the only way we can become better marketers is by learning from each other. And this 24-hour conference allows marketers from around the world to have the access to the best of the best, including the people with me here today. This is accessible from anywhere. You have online access. And I'm going to be the host for the second half of our New York conversations here for this 24-hour conference. And then we're going to be bringing up the host in San Francisco online for a couple of sessions after that. This lineup today has so far been fantastic. Speakers have joined us from companies like Disney, Google, Lego, and in the next few hours, you'll be hearing from marketing execs from Unicef, Microsoft, Uber, and Vimeo. So keep those tweets coming. You can share your thoughts through Twitter and other social channels with the global marketing community using our hashtag Global Marketing Day. So for the next 4.5 hours, I'll be your East Coast host, helping you navigate our 30-minute sessions. And these are going to include a 15-minute presentation followed by 15 minutes of discussion. And you can join, or you can ask questions about this discussion or join in on our discussion anytime. Just add it to the comment thread at globalmarketingday.com. So today this afternoon, I'm pleased to have Angelica Ong, Global Digital Marketing and Communications Strategist and Social Media Manager at Unicef with us here today. Angelica works on global digital marketing and social media communications at UNICEF's Office of Innovation, and she is tasked with managing and overseeing digital content creation, social media, and digital marketing globally. With experience in social media for good, Angelica will cover content and social media, digital marketing strategy that will tap into her work that she does at UNICEF. Now, joining Angelica for our discussion after her presentation is Jason Bernard, host of Digital Marketing Podcast, hashtag SEO is AEO. Love that, by the way. David Markovich also will be joining us, founder and CEO of Online Geniuses. Now, Jason is a digital marketing consultant, speaker, author, and the host of SEO is AEO, as I mentioned. And David is a marketer and community builder with a marketing background as direct consultant for some of the largest brands, including Johnson & Johnson, Google, Comedy Central, and Key Bank. Now, I want to thank Angelica for her compelling... here we go. All right, sorry. I'm getting ahead. All right, so Angelica, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me here. So I am Angie. I work as a digital communication strategist for UNICEF here in New York, in particular for the Office of Innovation. So before we get started, I'll just give a brief overview as to what UNICEF is and what the Office of Innovation does, just to give a bit more context as to what I'll showcase. So what is UNICEF? So UNICEF is UN's agency for children. It is 72 years old. We work across 190 countries and territories. In 2016 alone, we've responded to around 344 emergencies spanning across 108 countries. We are also the largest buyer of vaccinations for children, and we've supplied 47 million children with educational supplies. So you'll kind of see the context of where we work and the brand that we hold, and I've been very privileged to be part of this organization. But I work for the Office of Innovation. So what is innovation at UNICEF? Simply, it is really trying to find new processes, new products and services, and new ways of doing things that add value. So we really see ourselves as an interdisciplinary team that works across different frontier technologies comprised of data scientists, machine learning specialists, humanitarians, design thinkers, communicators, looking at the intersection of the opportunities that the industries out there are providing and how we could utilize and partner with them to solve the 1 billion needs of the most vulnerable. So what we do is we identify, prototype, and test these technologies, and when it actually works, we scale it across globally. So you could kind of see that we are in this intersection where we have a mother brand and we also have a sub-brand. And for a marketer like me, it's a very exciting but yet challenging space that I work in. We also see the value of partners, particularly as you could see in the screen. We partner heavily with private sector and technology companies, because we want to engage and strengthen our innovation arm. And so I would pretty much say that this is our target audience, primary target audience. So I just want to delve deep into how do we actually communicate an innovation story within UNICEF that has a very different sort of space that we work in. And I think that's the interesting part of it. So before anything else, I think to illustrate this, I'll just showcase Baby Joy. All right, so that is Baby Joy, the first baby to receive a vaccine by a drone in a remote island in Vanuatu. And I think as a communicator, this is what I strive to tell this story at. And when I look and dissect into how we do it, I could see it in 4 pillars. How do we actually communicate technology and innovation? And how do we actually stick to our mother brand, which is to save children's lives? And I would sum it up basically to 4 things. A lot of times we stumble into an issue of driving the story by technology. But who cares sometimes, right? There's a niche market that probably would care, but at the end of the day, we are UNICEF and we need to show that impact. So whether it is as tangible as a drone, as you could see with Baby Joy, and sometimes it becomes way more complex because it's not a physical innovation, you can actually kind of portray it in a way of how to illustrate the impact within a 1 year's time frame or within a 10 years time frame. How will that impact a child's life? And that's very important for us in a storytelling perspective. Another is to draw emotion. We all talk to people regardless of all our target audiences. And for this, basically we understand what a baby would feel and we understand what a mother would feel, and that's very important. So finding that narrative within the narrative is something we constantly look at. Also differentiation. What's new? What's valuable to it? This is a very perfect example of why it's different or why it adds value. Instead of doing 1 to 3 days by foot traveling with the vaccine onto an island, you're able to transport it in 25 minutes. That's a value add. And we shouldn't forget the technology as well, because technology is what actually powers this whole thing. And we have to be the experts in the field, so we have to make sure that we educate people digestibly what the technology is and what the opportunities and the risks are. So that is pretty much how we tell our story. And I will go in more detail as to why we think this is successful. But once you kind of got that narrative, what are the digital channels or communication channels we use? So basically, I'll pretty much showcase it here, but I don't want to really talk about it in deep context because it's pretty much the same as everyone else. There's internal audience, there's external audience, there's digital and social, there's media. But I just want to focus on 2 things. One is we really focus on the technology in the private sector. So a lot of our key messages and narrative really is directed to that. And second, we also educate internally because we are a big organization spanning across 190 countries, and change is hard, Change is very hard. So we have to educate people that innovation is good and it will add value. So then we ask, what are the tactics or strategies we use? And firstly, it's the content. And I've been talking about this for a while now, but it is to find that human interest story that people can relate to. And in a nutshell, why? Because once you relate to a person, it's shareable. And most of the time, all of us marketers, that's our goal, is to be able to amplify that voice and be able to amplify that narrative. The second approach is also looking in your internal team. Sometimes we try to outsource and try to find influencers, but sometimes the most interesting, diverse voices come from within. And whether you have to place them in opinion pieces on media, whether you let them go on TED Talks, whether you submit them in the most innovative people around the world, sometimes look within as well, because you need to put a voice in your brand, and that's very important as well. A lot of times you do partnerships, and we partner with private sector and technology companies because they can help strengthen our solutions. But you should also look at it as what can we do together to align the communication and package the communication better. So I'll give a brief example, which is Red Hat. Red Hat is one of the largest open source software providers that we partnered with, and we did a bit of an unconventional partnership approach with them. We basically took our technology team and we took their team. We sent them out 8 weeks offsite and also traveled to Colombia to basically develop a prototype for mapping every school of the world. So in terms of a communication standpoint, what we did was we created mini-series, we've gone to conferences together, we did a lot of media placements and press releases to kind of package that whole 8 weeks. And if you look online, it's definitely something that is valuable to look at. We also spend a lot of time in multimedia because a lot of times it's not easy to tell the story by words. People just get lost with the technological jargon of everything. It's not as easy as the drones example. So we spend a lot of time doing data visualizations, animations, videos, GIFs, to be able to capture people's attention and to be able for them to digest it and learn more. We also look at our branding. As you could see, we have a semi-differentiated branding from our mother brand, Unicef. And for us, that's very important because once we talk to these technology companies and private sector, we need to look that we're slightly different, that we're taking new approaches and things. And that's why we have to keep it consistent. Why does branding matter? It is your first impression to the audience. And it's actually the lasting impression that people remember you with. We also spend a lot of time building our key principles. I think this is very important in terms of how we communicate and the narrative we say. And as you can see, we've built that principles and endorsed by so many people. And that's a branding positioning for us. If people have endorsed us and used these principles, then we actually have achieved our objective, which is to be at the forefront of innovation within our space. So what does success look like to us? I'll give it another snapshot of what it is, but it's fairly similar to everyone. Share of voice, share of reach, engagement, brand sentiment. That's probably the fundamental sort of things you put in a report. But I think the key insight for me that I've learned is that it varies. It varies really per partner, particularly for initiatives like us who work with multi-stakeholders. It's probably not this they want. It's probably funding, it's probably partners, it's probably a placement somewhere. And you have to know that from the very beginning so that you can kind of align and make sure your strategy is in place. So with Baby Joy, I think it's definitely a perfect example of what I think is a success. And I'll give you a snapshot of what happened once we've released this story. In 3 weeks, we've been able to give exclusive to New York Times, both print and digital. We've been mentioned 679 media mentions, 42 are top tier. We've also been awarded Global Best Practice Program at Expo 2020. And this video that you've watched has been watched around 150 times. Well, 150,000 times, sorry. I was like, that's not right. So at the end, I'm just going to say that as a communicator, it's a privilege and it's a responsibility that we constantly communicate how innovation could improve children's lives, like Baby Joy, like children, young people, and adolescents around the world. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. Great examples, great stories, Angelica. And I want to thank you for that compelling presentation on co-creating content, co-creating audience-driven content, and highlighting those innovative campaigns. So I'm sure you have, those of you who are watching, you have questions for Angelica. So please add them to the thread at globalmarketingday.com or post them using the hashtag globalmarketingday. So let's start with a few questions with our panel. Jason and David. Jason, first I'm going to ask you a question here. How do you think companies have leveraged social as a sourcing, or what are some interesting ways companies have used social as a sourcing or partnership tool for content? To co-create. So how are companies using social media?
Well, I mean, reaching out to your partners. We were talking earlier on about the idea that Unicef has this dual problem of communicating both their core mission, which is helping children, but also communicating with these tech companies to say to them, actually, we're using tech and we're using the tech to fulfill our core values, and reaching out to Red Hat or Microsoft was an example we gave earlier on, to co-create that content to get both messages across at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's a brilliant example. I mean, right off the top of my head, I don't have a better example than the one you just shared. I mean, it's a terribly difficult balancing act that you guys are doing, is communicating these two seemingly different or opposing ideas of helping children and using technology, and satisfying both the people who are watching, who are interested in the kids, and the technology companies.
Yeah, and David, so do you think companies could do this that aren't necessarily, partnering with a social for good type of organization, like for-profit companies? Can they use this co-creation effort?
So I think the easiest way to do co-creation on social is find out who's talking about you. So for example, if Red Hat, before working with them, tweeted, like, UNICEF's mission is really powerful, that's a very warm lead of someone that wants to collaborate with you, right? So I always use Google Alerts whenever I'm building something up for my own, like seeing who's talking about us. And a lot of times I'll reach out and say, if you want to learn more, or I really like what you're doing, let's collaborate. There's a really interesting tool that's free. It's called Talkify. And you could set up alerts across Reddit, Twitter, all the forums, and every day it gives you a whole list in an email of everyone who spoke about you. And a lot of times there'd be somebody with a big following on Twitter that mentioned you, or was like, hey, I really like what you're doing, or has anyone checked this out? A lot of times you'll be surprised. People don't even tag you. So the social listening is a very powerful route to go and figuring out who you should collaborate with.
Angelica, you mentioned looking inside your company, because a lot of companies do, look at industry influencers to partner with and co-create with, but you mentioned going inside. How do you decide who to connect with?
Well, first and foremost, I would say a good public speaker, for sure. I think sometimes that's very essential when you put them in the spotlight. Someone who's very technology savvy, but has been in the industry and been in the humanitarian context for a long time. And someone who has a very diverse portfolio. That is very interesting in general. And we've been very privileged that in our team, there's a significant amount of people who could do that and who have been named in Forbes, 30 under 30 and all these stuff that we can actually tap into. But yeah, just to note that not forgetting also your internal team when you put a brand voice out there, and just or mix and hybrid it with an external as well.
Jason, I have a question for you from the live stream. Okay. What is the best strategy for using social media for social mission for a digital agency? So a digital agency that has a social mission, what's the best strategy that they might take?
Well, you're talking earlier on the problems UNICEF have, and coming back to that, the idea of personality. And I think we tend to forget that brands have a personality, and you were talking about which influencers you're going to work with. It needs to be an influencer with a similar personality to yours. And I see a lot of the time companies thinking I need to work with, or brands thinking I need to work with that person because they're more important. And they forget the fact that their personality has been diluted by associating themselves with somebody who does not have that personality. And one of the things I'm talking about in content marketing is saying that you need a platform, a public, a personality, promotion. And that idea of personality is often forgotten. So if you're going to go out there, as a UNICEF or as an agency with a social mission, make sure the personality is there. You don't want somebody heavy selling, pushing. You need somebody who has that.
The values align.
I was going to say something in French, actually, bienveillance, which is a really nice word that there isn't a translation for as far as I know in English. It's bienveillance is kindly overwatching.
Sure.
So the personality I would be looking for with that kind of situation is the kindly overwatching person. Sorry about the awful vocabulary.
I'm going to use that French forever.
Bienveillance, wonderful word.
So David, I have another question for you from the live stream. How can you engage with a community that includes an intangible product?
So what do you mean?
So an intangible like selling insurance or investment or something that's not tangible. So not widgets, bottles, software, whatever.
So I don't know any French, but I'll give my answer in English.
Please.
Regardless of what Instagram's not tangible, right? But people love Instagram. I don't think tangible things make a difference, right? This cup is tangible. It doesn't make it more valuable than some app I have on my phone that even counts my steps, right? There's one that I love more than others. Also, this is very replaceable. If you brought me 10 other cups, I would drink from all of them. If you tell me 10 other social apps, I would be very careful what I choose from. So tangible, I think sometimes things that are not tangible are easy to switch and optimize, so they're usually better. So I don't think that's a barrier in general. I don't find that as somebody who builds non-tangible products. Do you have a French quote for that? Okay. So I was saying the same way. So I don't know if they're talking about from an influencer perspective. Like I know they get tangible items and they could take pictures with them and stuff like that, or they could talk about it. And that's a tangible product. It's easier in that sense of the way, but there's definitely ways to do it that are not tangible.
Can I just, it comes back to the storytelling that was being talked about earlier on. If you're in intangible, you really need a story. You need to be storytelling, much more so than with a glass, although you can tell a story with a glass. So I would say big plus, storytelling. Think about your story, communicate with emotions you were saying earlier on. That would be my secret sauce for the day.
Here's maybe one last question for you, Angelica, from the live stream. What do you think is the best thing to do to engage people into donations? NGOs usually have a hard time with that.
Sure. I would go back to you and say that, yes, storytelling of impact is very important. You need to be able to let the viewers or the donators or whoever it is feel what the added value of that money that comes to. So if you cannot illustrate that, you'll not be successful.
I also want to jump in.
Sure.
You will be shocked for how many people are searching where to donate their money. So if people can't find, there's a tremendous amount of people who have a lot of money. They're like, who should I donate this to? And that's what they want to do. So if you want to get more donations, be found in those resources that people find. So for example, like listicles, which I'm sure you do, top 10 donations for people who are passionate about this. And get your story out. Don't just make a beautiful story, make sure it's reachable in the exact audience that you want and bring it back to communities that are interested in that. A lot of times they're looking for you more than you're looking for them.
That's absolutely. So just to jump in with one last very short comment.
And then you jump
Talking
in.
about tangible to non-tangible applications to the incredibly intangible donations. Donations are the extreme where you actually don't get anything in return except the good feeling.
Right.
And the storytelling goes from not very important, pretty important, absolutely essential.
Yep.
Jason. But last point. Okay,
this will be our last point.
Last point. So I know you're saying that people don't get anything in return but feeling good. But everything you buy is for feeling good. This one, it's just another asset.
Yep.
For example, water, you're drinking it because you want to feel good. So you shouldn't look at it like they're not getting anything. They're getting exactly what they want.
Well, that told me, didn't it?
Oh, well. And it's interesting how the same rules apply for marketing, for profit in a way as for the nonprofit, right? Because you've got to have, what good is it or you want to be findable, but it's also got to be credible and motivating to take action, right? Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, super. Well, thank you again to Angelica Ong, a global digital marketing and communication strategist and social media manager at Unicef. Also to Jason Bernard, host of digital marketing podcast SEO is AEO, and David Markovich, founder and CEO of Online Geniuses. Well, I'm really intrigued about Online Geniuses.
It's a community for people who do marketing. So we actually have quite a few people from UNICEF. We're based on Slack. I'm not going to do a pitch. Whatever. We'll talk of it,
we'll
but we're a
connect.
community for people who do this, and we have a lot of these similar conversations within our community, and it's free to join.
Awesome. Well, it's been great diving into the nonprofit world with all three of you. And as we move on to our next session, follow everyone the Global Marketing Day hashtag to continue the conversation online.
Thank you.